Hello students, welcome again to UGC lecture series on educational psychology. And today we have a very important subject upon which we would be talking, and the subject is psychoactive drugs. Now this subject has become so important globally, I mean internationally, that people start concentrating on its ramifications, its effects, and actually the part these drugs are playing in our lives, particularly, especially youth. The whole subject is connected with mind and its states, whether it is a conscious state of mind. As we know, in our earlier discussions we did talk on conscious states of mind, unconscious states of mind, moods, etc. And now we are today talking of some certain drugs which influence our active mental processes. Whether it is a process of thinking, it is process of concentrating, it is even a process of performing. So all levels of human action, human behavior get influenced because of use of certain kinds of drugs. Quite interestingly, drugs, as is our information, as is in your knowledge also, are generally used for health considerations. So whenever a drug was discovered, it was invented, it was created, or whatever, there was a motive behind, there was a need behind. So the types of ailments, the types of sufferings, that's human sufferings, even animal sufferings as such, they would be having some amount of treatment in the form of drugs. But then when these drugs in their usage go out of proportions, then it signals, it sounds a kind of danger signal, and that is when the human condition is devastated. We are actually talking of those drugs now which somehow have influenced our youth, have influenced our people in larger sizes, and we generally find that this is becoming very important to see what would be the result if the trend continues as it does. Now if you look at the data from different countries of the world, you will find that in USA is the major country that is to be taken as drug user, and particularly psychoactive drugs, in which you will be talking right away about different kinds of drugs that are being used. But the point is that these psychoactive drugs, which are directly connected with our mental processes, have gone to that extent now that the same thing or the same phenomena has become vitally important for our the question of survival on this planet. We are finding youth is mostly involved in most of the areas, whether it is a school area, it is home, that is a domestic area, it is job area, wherever you find that some amount of drugs is being used for people. And the reason, if you directly ask such a question, why you are using say PEP, why are you using LSD, why are you taking marijuana, why are you making a frequent use of sedatives, etc., the reason would be, sir, it gives us relief, it reduces our tension, it reduces our stress level, we forget things about world and its ailments and its difficulties. But the question is not that only. Once it enters into our blood, and once you become habitual in an addict state, there is much less scope for de-addictive processes as such. And today we are finding that both male and female, youth and elderly people, and adults are involved in these kinds of things, and then the result is generally known to us in the terms of their low doings in terms of performance. We are finding that the motivation levels to work are declining. We are finding that responsibility and assignment of responsibilities is also declining. We are finding that arrogance and aggressiveness is on increase. We are finding that the youth is alienating. We are finding that this drug addiction, as a matter of fact, has entered without any consideration of gender, caste, creed, location, geography, etc. This really becomes a problem. Now, since I am academically talking to you, we would be sharing some ideas on certain kinds of drugs which are being used by people, and we shall also see how these drugs influence their basic mental process. As I have told you in my earlier lecture when I was talking on extended status of mind, drug activity and psychoactive drugs were actually responsible even in altering the state of consciousness. That is, you are say committed to a kind of perceptual frame in which you are believing, and you find that some ideologies as a support helping in your society. You are finding that you are working with some consideration, some ambition, some motive in your life. Now you find once the drug enters into the stream of consciousness, what happens? It alters completely, totally the state. It alters the state of mind in such a way that it would reduce you abundantly, ridiculously to the zero level of performance. Or it may heighten your performance, heighten to the extent that you would undo things. You would aggressively start attacking certain job points or certain activities which would not prove to be qualitatively better, would not increase and enhance your excellence on work, whether you are a student working for exams, or you are working on some job, or you are producing certain things, or you are creatively engaged in some kind of artistic activity. So wherever this enhancement goes abruptly high, is heightens, means that you are actually working for devastation. So let us now see the types of drugs which are being used. Now, first category of drugs that is in use are in the name of sedatives, and these sedatives are barbiturates, nimobutals, Vernol, and then you have Toinol. Now these different drugs that I have named, their characteristic feature is that they would reduce tension, and they would induce relaxation and sleep. Under the impact of these sedatives, some kind of relaxation is felt by the person who makes use of these, whether they are in the form of a pill, tablet, or simple gross type arrangement, or a alcoholic condition. You will find that they reduces the amount of tension the person is feeling. Second, that they may enhance sleep or rest. Then the other category is those of stimulants, and these stimulants go as amphetamines, dextradine, methadine, and cocaine. All these different drugs that I have talked about, they are stimulants. They may sometimes increase the confidence level of people, but the general characteristic feature would be the suspension of what you call tension, stress, or the feelings of unpleasant experiences. Then the third category is those of narcotics, and in narcotics, opium, morphine, codeine, heroin, methadine, these are synthetic narcotics being used, and Here, the basic influencing category, this as stimulant, is that it may stimulate, it may extend, it may stir up the action of the people. They will find that after having morphine, some pain is relieved, and taking narcotics, some courage. You know, these days this is very, popular things about different sportsmen who are engaged in the types of combats or competitive, games and sports, where you find that narcotic test is being applied to people to find whether they have taken this kind of drug, because under the influence of this kind of drug they feel more stimulated, and you feel more stimulated, you feel more courageous, you feel more confidential, so perhaps you may win a score. But at the same time you are going to devastate yourself, devastate the team spirit, devastate every other thing, because then you are not earning a kind of a score because you did work hard for winning that score, but you are under the influence of some drug, which may happen otherwise, that the person who are competing directly with you, you may kill that person, you may bodily injure the team, you may do anything that occurs to your mind for winning a score. So winning a score then is very shabby, is ridiculous. So most of the people make use of narcotics only to heighten the levels of performance and get more courage. Then fourth category, about which I am just now talking, is psychedelics or hallucinogens like marijuana, cannabis, hashish and lysergic acid diethylene, that is LSD. These drugs which I have named are all hallucinogens, that is, under the impact of these drugs. If you take marijuana or if you take LSD, you'll find different hallucinations around you. You'll find different colorful pictures coming to you, and you'll find some soothing experience. If you once take a small amount of it, you find that you are in a wonderland from which you do not want to bring yourself out. It's such a pleasant experience, and generally those people who advise others, suggest others, like peer groups and small children and the friends, that you go and have an experience with LSD or marijuana, and you'll find that the paradise opens itself upon you. This is all something that is completely imaginary. But then influence is deadly. That is, it completely makes you unconscious of the realities and brings before you the world that you yourself create. And sometimes what happens under the impact of LSD, that things become brighter, and the people who are addicts of this kind of drug, they would say that we are not so familiar with the reality earlier without making use of this drug. After making use, we have been seeing things in their proper perspective. Days become brighter, and experiences become brighter, and new dimensions of realities come to our eyes after making use of it. And that influence is that heightens the level of consciousness itself beyond normal range. And therefore, even if the immediate experience is pleasant, but what is the nature of distant experience? The experience after you are outside the addictive influence of the drug, that is dismaying, that is disappointing. There is completely doing nothing. Lethargy, doing nothing, tiredness, fatigue is all on your head. Fifth category consists of minor tranquilizers. One is Librium, one is Miltown, the other one is Valium, that is Diazepam and Compos. So these minor tranquilizers, they do have the kind of effect upon your personality, upon your consciousness, but the effect is temporary one. That is, sometimes even doctors would prescribe small amounts of diazepam or Compos or bestapose or any other sedative which has a very brief impact, that is, you have lost sleep, and then they would advise, if this is a continuous kind of affair, you may make use of a small dose of diazepam, and then you will get relief. That is true, but then generally what we see is even people become addicted to these drugs. Now there could be alternative ways. Now what is suggested is that to find out alternative ways of happy, meaningful involvement. Means that if you are not sleeping well, don't find drug. Let drug be the last one to be taken by us. See what are the alternative ways in which sleep can be induced in an individual. What should I do as a person who is a patient of sleeplessness? What should I do other than drug? That maybe there are a number of suggestions which can be suggested that you do it before you go to sleep. So those alternatives are to be found. Now generally that I did talk about these 5 categories, whether I did talk about stimulants, barbiturates, or sedatives, or tranquilizers, or psychedelics, all these drugs combinedly are responsible, are the sole agents of destruction of your consciousness, of your conscious experience, and of your mind as such. So mind gets destroyed. If mind gets destroyed, it's not important only that the consciousness which has the reduced effect, has the effect that totally reduces its scope in work. Not only that is important, what is important is that once you lose your mind, you have lost everything. Once you lose your mind, you have lost your work. You have lost your mind, you have lost your performance. You have lost your mind, you have lost your society. You have lost your mind, you have lost your religion. You have lost the entire institutional life. Because we are seeing that people are, whether it is the youngsters or it is older people who are involved in usage or abusing drugs as such, they are the ones who generally don't care for society. What is it that we have to take from the world? This would be the general kind of thing that they would say. We have to take nothing out of the world. And the world is not going to help us at all. No one has been created for helping us. So if nothing is going to help me, why shouldn't I help myself by forgetting every other thing? And forgetting every other thing means entering into a lineage, entering into a standard way of delineating oneself from society, that is getting addicted to drugs. Now this is a lecture which otherwise you will find that is very useful so far as the consequences of drug addiction is concerned. But talking academically also, talking in a tone and mood in which we find this subject as a kind of tied up with your credo, with your syllabus, with your understanding, with your writing, with your examination or course. Even here, what is most important is the person who begins with a given consciousness, who begins with a given conscious experience, who begins with a particular state of mind. Is there any way in which these states of mind are altered? You see, actually once we admit people to schools, colleges, institutions, the point in mind is, the objective in mind at that moment is that there would be some kind of scheme or mechanism in which people will be transformed, changed. That is behavior modification of people. Their thinking modified, their concepts richer, their knowledge more solid. Means that education works as an altering agency, modifying agency, helping agency. So if drugs take that place, if you replace education with a drug, means that drugs would direct you, and this is what is happening. See, once we become drug addicts, drugs take the center stage of directing us, of monitoring our behavior. We become prisoners or arrested by the use of drug. You will find, and it's very unfortunate, in many an educational situations in our country as a whole, we find that most of the students, adolescent groups, girls and boys, are involved. Just for taste's sake, some people take it only just to taste it. But once you start tasting it, you will never leave it. Then you'll find, oh, I have forgotten every other thing in the world. What a wonderful world I am living in after having a drug. So, academically, the stopping of drug abuse is one of the most important and very immediate requirement. And that requirement, not only for your health, not only for your sound academic educational health, but the health of the country as such. The progress, development, material, economic, social, whatever, would depend on the healthy souls and sound minds. And sound mind is one which is not temporarily or permanently distracted by such things as have proven to be not helpful for human beings. I would like to make a small brief summary of what I have said by now. This is a subject on psychoactive drugs, and the major influence of psychoactive drugs is to alter the mental processes, particularly the thinking process. And second point is that people who involve themselves in the abuse of drugs or use of drugs have different categories of drugs in which they can start uses, like you have sedatives, you have narcotics, you have psychedelics, you have minor tranquilizers, and all these categories help in a graded kind of scale to influence the people. And we have seen directly or indirectly that most of the people go away from the institutional life under the influence of drugs. I hope by this time you have understood. Of course, I know that this is a very small time in which such a subject cannot be taken care in its larger proportions, but then you must have understood the basic concepts behind drug addiction and psychoactive drugs. With this, I thank you all with the hope that we'll meet again in our next class. Thank you very much.